emceeing all day and introduce myself like a million years ago, it feels like now. My name is Gabrielle Heyman. I run global brand partnerships for Zynga. We're part of the Take-Two family. We make games. We have over 200 million people globally who play our games every day. And I am super excited to be on stage right now with Josh Blacksmith from Kimberly-Clark. So welcome.
Thank you. Yes, so I've been with Kimberly-Clark for about 4 years, and I am the Senior Director of Global Consumer Relationships and Engagement. So I kind of wear two hats. One, all things sort of focused on zero and first-party data, owned and earned relationships, and another hat I wear is leading our global digital transformation.
You do a lot of things, as we're going to uncover today. So why don't we start at the beginning with your career, your experience, and how you ultimately ended up at Kimberly-Clark.
Yeah, you bet. So after spending about 18 years really working in a number of different digital agencies, I most recently was a senior director, a SVP actually of general manager of CRM at FCB in Chicago. And in that role, as you guys can imagine, I spent a lot of time actually driving business development. And in that capacity, I actually went to the UK to pitch to Kimberly-Clark. And in that pitch, I was really talking about the need to take greater control and ownership of the consumer relationship. The CMO happened to be in that pitch. It was a 7-hour pitch, so I got to know the people really well. And coming out of that, they asked if I'd have interest in coming in-house to help build out the capability. And so, apologies, I have a little bit of a cold. I did take a test. It's not COVID.
I'm gonna sit this way for our panel.
So I made the leap in, and in large part is because the people at Kimberly-Clark were just so amazing. Smart individuals, people really passionate. I often say that if I asked 100 people at Kimberly-Clark if they wanted to be involved in a project, I'd get 100 hands raised. And so I knew that it was a place that I wanted to come to actually start to lead and drive some of the digital transformation.
So question, I never asked you this when we spoke, but you were hired. You were so good you were hired, but was your agency hired or did they just keep you?
Yeah, the agency was hired too.
Okay.
So that was an interesting transition, as you can imagine.
Yeah, and then you became the client. So interesting. So what was so intriguing to you? Because I think the agency world must be so different from working for a CPG. Like what was, why did you say yes? And what kind of experience did you take from before to apply to now?
Yeah, one of the things that I found that's really interesting is in my agency role, I worked across a whole bunch of different verticals, but my career was always very focused on data-driven consumer centricity. So it was really finding the intersection of data, technology, and creativity, and realizing that at that intersection, there's a lot of meaningful and powerful relationship building that we can do with consumers. And so what I was able to do was really take a lot of the learnings they had across a bunch of different verticals and actually bring those into Kimberly-Clark. What's really interesting is that a lot of CPG manufacturers, great hearing Pepsi a moment ago, but a lot of CPG manufacturers have been ripe for disruption. So that was one of the reasons why I wanted to make the leap in, was to come to KC and to actually help the organization get closer to the consumer when historically it's been very focused on sort of retail relationships first. And so what I've found is that a lot of those principles that I've built over my time in the agency world directly apply into what I've been driving here the last 4 years.
Let's piggyback on that. So I would love for you to share more about the digital disruption and digital transformation, that what you saw when you were kind of onboarding and what you felt you could do. And what I thought was really interesting in our prep call was you were saying, like, you guys don't have the biggest budgets necessarily, so you're not going to win a shouting match. So you're going to be really smart about how you move forward.
Really the vision that I laid out 4 years ago when I was pitching at Kimberly-Clark has been the journey that I've been on for 4 years now. So it is truly transforming our marketing model. When I first came in, my primary remit was to establish a zero and first-party data practice, so working closely with our technology teams to set that practice up. And in doing that, you very quickly realize it's not just about acquisition, it's about utilization. It's about finding ways to create real value for consumers in moments value that allows our brands to stand for something more than just their physical product attributes. And so establishing clear value exchange principles was one of the key things I started to do. Right after that, you very quickly, I launched a digital transformation initiative, which we called PESO, paid, earned, shared, and owned. And this is where you start to move beyond just zero party, which is information that consumers explicitly provide for our use, and first party data, which is data that consumers implicitly provide for our use. It's still consented, but it's captured through our website for purposes of personalization. And we very quickly pivoted from just the collection of data into how do we leverage every channel at our disposal to make sure that we win in key moments with consumers. So as a traditional CPG manufacturer, you can imagine, historically, we've been very over-indexed in spending in paid. Because when you spend in paid, you have a mixed model or an MTA that tells you the ROI of your efforts. And when you lose sight of the consumer, that becomes sort of your closed loop. I'm just going to buy paid media, send a consumer into retail, wait for the mixed model to come out. That, unfortunately, actually sets you up to play victim to a number of different blind spots that mixed models happen to have. And so the spirit of PESO was to help uncover some of those blind spots, to say, look, do consumers only experience our brands through paid media alone today? No. How about if we invest in non-working content for our website, which can't be picked up in a mixed model, while we invest in paid search so that we're seeing our organic search boost. And when you do that, your paid search ROIs improve. So the spirit of PESO was, let's not focus on every single moment across our brands that we know we need to win with consumers, but let's pick those that are most important, not get into a paid media only shouting match, but think about the role of every one of our channels to go win and make that our moment to lose. So we launched that initiative in the US with our baby and childcare business, and then very quickly pivoted and moved that into 45 different markets globally in 2021. And then in 2021, we also launched what we called, it's basically a data science initiative, another transformation initiative. We didn't have a single data scientist, so in-house, that was focused on our marketing. It was very focused on RGM, so about pricing and trade. And so we had to bring in some external support, but we started to build our own models. We have access to data now. Some of our partners from Fetch are here. We have access to data that you would not have expected CPG manufacturers to have access to even 5 years ago. So it gives us the ability to actually think like a retailer. So bringing that data in and starting to build our own proprietary models to utilize that data in a way that gives us a competitively advantaged way to drive growth. And so again, we launched that in the US, and we're in the process of scaling that initiative now into the UK, Brazil, and Australia. But that journey that we've been on, ultimately, we're in this moment now of a need to drive orchestration and automation. Because as you can imagine, when you're standing up use cases to prove capability, it becomes incredibly labor intensive. We need to take the labor intensity out of that and make sure that this becomes something that's more repeatable and easier for all of our brand managers to sort of drive on a day-to-day basis. But now, if somebody asks me, why did you start collecting zero-party data? Why are you driving this as your digital transformation priority? It's ultimately because we want to drive one-to-one lifetime value. So we're now uniquely positioned to look at these key moments where we can drive incremental value across our entire portfolio.
I think one thing that you touched on that I have to say here, because it makes me sort of happy being in the gaming space, is that everything today, there's been this continuous theme of the media mix model being almost dead. And you were talking about the blind spots, which I think is so interesting because like gaming, for example, is one of the number one activities people do, but it doesn't really show up in the media mix. But still, nonetheless, data is such an important part and going in with like clear insights. And so skipping over that, we can maybe circle back to the media mix, but I did want to continue on to with the data science idea and how data science is playing a part in your digital marketing. And I know we have a video too we're gonna share.
Yeah, so when you're first working to introduce any sort of capability and you realize you don't have sort of the right resources in-house, One of the things I very quickly needed to do was start to demonstrate use cases to start to prove out how effective the work could be. And so we wanted to start with our own data asset. And so we're fortunate enough over the last 4 years to build an incredible technology, data infrastructure, and the technology stack to support the activation off of this. But I didn't want to go out and invest in new data. Wanted to use existing data to prove out the use cases, and so we did that with our zero-party asset. But then we very quickly moved, after we built these use cases that I'll show in the video here in a moment, we then moved into a pseudonymized environment. So leveraging LiveRamp as a safe haven, and that backed with GBQ, we have the ability to actually buy data from Nielsen, where in the past we would have gone and bought that data, deployed a campaign, then we would have gone back and bought more data, deployed another campaign. We're defining a data schema now where we go buy the data, bring it into our safe haven, and turn it into a multi-purpose asset. So we have the ability to build our own models within that sandbox, within that environment, and extend our reach, drive the broader reach opportunities. And the next step after that is going to be all of the retail gardens, all of the retail media clean rooms, and their own safe haven solutions, their own clean room solutions that are being set up. So I'll play the quick video just to give a sense for the impact of some of the work that we drove.
Kimberly-Clark presents Creating Consumer-Centric Lifetime Value. CPG manufacturers have historically been very consumer data poor. This drove an over-reliance on third-party data and often resulted in impersonal, not-so-targeted marketing. Now, a universe of consumer-level data is at our fingertips, and Kimberly-Clark is grasping it. We saw an opportunity to identify precise data signals and use them to inform communications with buyers. Leveraging that data helps make meaningful connections with consumers that drive higher conversion for the business. Now we're driving growth in new proprietary ways. We built an enhanced single view of consumers across all brands by leveraging data science and automation to realize personalization at scale. We then created a dedicated agile team and process to prioritize and activate data signal opportunities. Our initiative revealed opportunities to connect with more consumers at critical moments. For example, in a breakthrough social signal test, Huggies engaged with newly expecting moms to authentically celebrate their moment with them. This drove 100% positive sentiment and unprecedented reach without spending $1 of working media. We also developed models to analyze the purchasing behaviors of individual consumers. By forecasting future behavior, our pilots lifted incremental sales by as much as 38%. And we built a promotion sensitivity model that helped drive purchases with personalized discount levels, protecting margins and allowing us to make every dollar work harder. Our transformation initiative has accelerated our capabilities. In just 28 weeks, we turned data into competitive advantage to drive impactful consumer connections and immediate business growth. It's a seismic shift in our approach to digital marketing, driving growth by enabling an enhanced consumer experience. This is data-driven consumer centricity at its best.
So I built that to present to our board so that they could understand back in June sort of the impact that some of the work that we were driving was having on the business. And I think it was testament to the work that we've been doing that the board afterwards asked us, how can we do more of this faster? And so that's why we're pushing into the orchestration and automation space now, is to see us to be able to start to do this at more scale. So.
Yeah, that's interesting. So, speaking of all these insights, and I liked how, there's data, but there's an art and a science to this. And we were talking about the consumer journey. And I said it before, but I love being able to speak to these brands that I use. Like I used Huggies and Cotton. It's our favorite toilet paper in this house, because I know you wanted to know what toilet paper we use. But anyway, soft is important. So tell us about that. Like someone like me, like we're at a consumer journey, outside of paid media, what is the endpoint?
Yeah, well, I like to say that on the face of it, nobody wants a relationship with a toilet paper brand. And so it makes our job tough, but it also makes it fun when you think about how do you create that value that allows your brand, again, to stand for something more than just its functional attributes. And so when we started to look at each of our brands across all of our categories, we started to look for insights, search played a significant role for us when we were doing some of the initial work years ago. And with toilet paper, you can imagine there's a huge opportunity to create value for moms around independent toileting, so potty training. And so when you think about building an experience, which we're now building internationally in the UK, to create that kind of value, then consumers are more than willing to engage, provide data in exchange for that kind of value. Another example, we saw significant volumes around allergy season for solutions, and none of that traffic was coming to our properties. And so what we did is we partnered with a local weather company. Pollen count APIs are free. And we brought those into an owned experience that we built where we could create pollen alerts for consumers and then tie that pollen alert to a commercial opportunity for us as well for Kleenex. And so for us, it's really about finding those moments. It's not about, like we have, if you think about our baby and childcare, our Huggies and Pull-Ups business, we have a 3-year life cycle sort of well-defined where we know every insight and every moment we need to be connecting with the consumer. But if we tried to sort of go deep into every moment along those 3 years, we'd lose. We don't have the pockets to do that. So we have to focus on what are the key moments within that 3-year journey that are must-win moments, where again, we need to leverage every channel at our disposal to ensure that we win that moment. So if it's point of market entry for baby and childcare, that's too broad. But if it's hospital for Huggies, okay, well, what do we need to do to make sure that we're winning that hospital moment? Because that's such an important moment in the buying pattern.
And then there's also the bridge, right, between like Pull-Ups and Cottonelle.
Yep, another amazing bridge opportunity. And so in the data, and then looking at time series transactional data, again, which we now have access to, we can see real breakage. So we now have the opportunity to look at those moments and at a one-to-one level, but at scale. I think that's important to call out. All of these opportunities we showed up, I showed in this video, these were one-to-one opportunities to drive incrementality, but these were done with significant scale behind them. Another example not in there was if we can see allergy medication in a basket, how do we get a Kleenex message in front of that consumer? And if you think about that on a one-to-one level, but with the millions of consumers that we're seeing that in a basket, the scale around that sort of a personalized opportunity really.
The soothing lotion SKU, which you might need today. So this is also a theme that came up today was personalization at scale. And so obviously you're a global company. So how are you working with your global teams on the insights and making them actionable? And I'm also curious about like the nuances in different geos.
Yeah, so the way that we've stood up a lot of our transformation, a lot of this work is done where I'll go grab 5 to 10 cross-functional experts and focus on one brand and one market to prove it out. We have executive leadership buy-in to the transformation we're driving. And so with that buy-in, we also have the autonomy to just go do. I can allow this team to suspend disbelief, forget about all the reasons why everybody says this can't work, and just go solve it. And then what we've done is after we've proven it out in one market, we're able to take it and scale that into, like I said, with the first initiative, into 45 different markets and sector combinations globally. And so we're finding that there are amazing opportunities when it comes to not just the ways of working, but the technology infrastructure to support this kind of work can be very common. And so what we're doing is stepping into the markets and thinking about the nuanced data that may be available from market to market and helping those markets bring some real examples to life in their markets so they have more confidence investing behind it. So when we go to the UK to actually launch some of our data science work, I'll literally be having individuals in that market shadowing our Scrum team. We'll be working in 2-week sprints, building a backlog and defining what we want to achieve on a 2-week basis based on our capacity. So operating in true agile. And then over the course of 12 weeks, I'll be training that local team to take that backlog on their own and to start to truly embed the capability. So in my role as a digital transformation lead, it's really about rolling up my sleeves and doing, but at the same time, making sure that every single person that's doing alongside me has the confidence to be able to do this into perpetuity after. So that's really critical. Otherwise, it's not gonna become embedded and scale the way we need it to.
Yeah, you're teaching them to fish on their own. So wow, it's gone so fast, and we're almost out of time. And I want to leave time for questions from the audience. But I know one thing that is top of mind a little bit right now is a recession. Are we in one? And the competition companies like Kimberly-Clark have with store-bought brands. How do you navigate that? What are your predictions on what this year will bring?
Yeah, well, so all of our brands are premium brands. So in a category that can easily become commoditized, it puts that much more importance on making sure that we're finding and delivering experiences for our consumers, to make sure that they see us as a company that's creating value, again, beyond just what the product can offer. So I think one of the things that this transformation has started to enable for us is by relaxing our focus and intensity around the retail, because ultimately we have our best interest for our products, and we want to make sure that we're driving sales. But if we're just focused on driving a consumer into a retailer, when the consumer gets into the retailer really does not care if a consumer is buying our product or buying one of our competitors' products or buying a private label product. And so this entire journey we've been on has been to make sure that we can get further upstream, get closer we can be involved in the zero moment and drive those sorts of decisions before they even get into the physical or digital shelf. So I think we've laid a strong foundation to make sure that we are recession-proof. And you've seen some of our categories at the beginning of COVID, right? For all the wrong reasons, blew up. Toilet paper, it was an amazing year for us for Cottonelle for all the wrong reasons. So,
right. I didn't realize all the intricacies of putting toilet paper on the shelves until the pandemic. All right, so we have time for a question or two from the audience, and my colleague Chanel over there is going to take my MC job at passing the mic. So.
So my question is, when the board looked at your recommendation and said, what do you recommend to go faster and bigger? How did you respond? What are the things that you need?
Yeah, that's an amazing question. We need investment. People, I can't say enough about the importance of hiring the right sort of talent. And I think that's kind of the journey we're on, is finding the right balance between traditional brand management and digital acceleration. I say that we've moved from a phase which was digital disruption. The first 3 years of my time at KC, I felt like I was constantly driving disruption. Every conversation I was in was super tough because it was something that was working against the easy way or the old way of sort of doing things. Now that we've laid that foundation, I've said it's no longer disruption, it's acceleration. If we want to accelerate, that means we need to make sure that we are truly embedding this capability. It's no longer just me and the global digital team talking about this, it's seeing the actions in the local market and the ownership at that level. And so coming out of that board meeting, that was when we decided it's time for us to actually stand up actual teams that will own this market by market. We have regional teams that are supporting this ambition as well. But it's most important that we get into the local level and use these use cases to prove it out, so that they have confidence in investing beyond where they've been historically. It will continue to take time, but it's starting to take off, which is pretty fun, pretty exciting to see.
We have one last question.
Adam Pyatt at Live Intent. So I worked with Kimberly-Clark when, or I don't know, it's still at Mindshare. And it was right at that point of the digital transformation where you're starting to activate on first-party data, right? And the agency team would come back to me and say, it's just scale. Scale's the issue. Like it's tough. And when you're rolling that out, I think it was 2018, maybe 2019. When did you hit that point of inflection where it's scaling, it's working? Like, and what was that? Like, is it just time, or was there something that you guys decided in terms of like really embarking on making it scale? What did that look like for you guys?
Yeah, so there are a number of different ways that we've been working to deliver the value or to determine the value of our zero-party investment. And so using zero-party match panels, we had a partnership with a company called Numerator. I've done these in the past with other organizations as well. But we could literally look at experiences we were building and look at consumers that are a part of that experience versus consumers that are not a part of that experience, pre and post. We can go back 6 months, 12 months, and then 6 months post the launch. And time and again, the experiences we're building are proving out to drive incrementality, significant incrementality. So it doesn't take many of those examples, for everyone to start to recognize, well, what is my experience I need to build? Like, how do I put the right funding and the right support model behind that? And so I think that there, again, plenty of more opportunities to continue to prove out the value of what we do, including potentially opportunities to look at how are we actually monetizing that and offering sort of access to our owned properties to outside brands, non-competitive sort of outside brands as well. It's a really interesting space for us. So I think the other way that we've driven the scale has been by focusing not just on our zero-party asset, but demonstrating that through that asset and the rich understanding we have, both transactional but also behavioral, and then taking those unique understandings and building lookalikes in the second-party world, right, so that we can drive the reach, which is so important. So I never view sort of our scalability of zero-party as being zero-party problem. It's more how are we taking that zero-party and extending the reach? That's more the challenge and the opportunity. You can build amazing insights off of 50,000 consumers. It's just, are you set up to be able to sort of operationalize that in a way that sort of drives impact for the business?
All right. Well, thank you so much
Thank you
for joining us on stage.
Appreciate it. Thank you.